Most people pray for money the same way they pray for luck, emotional, desperate, and disconnected from responsibility. They cry, they plead, they fast, they repeat words, yet nothing changes. Not because prayer is weak, but because they are asking for the wrong thing. Money follows alignment, not desperation. This single truth changes everything about how provision actually works. Most people approach heaven from a position of lack. Their prayers are fueled by fear, urgency, and emotional pressure. They are not praying because they are aligned. They are praying because they are afraid of bills, afraid of comparison, afraid of falling behind, afraid of not being enough. That fear shapes the way they ask and what they ask for. They beg for relief instead of transformation. They ask for money instead of meaning. But desperation has never been a currency heaven responds to. Alignment is different. Alignment means your inner world matches your outer actions. It means your values, habits, discipline, and direction are synchronized with a purpose greater than comfort. When someone is aligned, they are not chasing money, they are pursuing responsibility. And responsibility is what heaven funds. Money is not a reward for suffering, prayer length, or emotional intensity. Money is a tool released to those who are positioned to use it without destroying themselves or others. Desperation shrinks your thinking. When you are desperate, you make short-term decisions, you look for shortcuts, you compromise standards, you want fast relief instead of long-term growth. Heaven does not invest in minds that think small and temporary, because whatever is released into desperation will be wasted, misused, or lost. That is why some people receive money suddenly and lose it just as fast. It wasn't that heaven failed them, it was that they were never aligned to sustain what they received. Alignment requires patience. It forces you to ask uncomfortable questions about your life. What am I building? Who am I serving? What problem am I solving? What value am I creating that justifies provision flowing through me? These questions move you out of fantasy and into reality. When your life starts answering those questions honestly, money becomes a byproduct, not a miracle you are waiting for. When you are aligned, your prayers change. You stop saying, "Please save me," and start saying, "Prepare me." You stop asking for escape and start asking for strength. You stop demanding outcomes and start requesting wisdom. This shift is subtle, but powerful. It signals maturity, and maturity is what heaven trusts. Just like no one gives a child full control over finances, heaven does not fund immature thinking, even if it is religious. Desperation is loud, emotional, and impatient. Alignment is quiet, focused, and disciplined. Desperation wants God to move everything around you. Alignment asks God to change you so you can move through anything. One is rooted in fear. The other is rooted in trust. Heaven always responds to trust faster than fear. When alignment is present, your actions begin to match your words. You stop praying for open doors while refusing to prepare. You stop asking for favor while avoiding responsibility. You stop asking for increase while staying comfortable with disorder, laziness, or inconsistency. Alignment forces integrity. It closes the gap between what you say you believe and how you actually live. This is why two people can pray the same prayer and receive very different results. One is aligned, the other is desperate. One is moving with intention, the other is waiting for rescue. One is building capacity, the other is hoping pressure will disappear. Heaven does not respond equally to unequal states of readiness. Alignment also removes anxiety around timing. When you are desperate, every delay feels like rejection. Every closed door feels like punishment. But when you are aligned, you understand that delay is often protection and preparation. You realize that money arriving too early can ruin you faster than money arriving late. So instead of panicking, you refine. You learn, you sharpen, you grow, and in that process, you quietly become the kind of person money can safely flow through. Another powerful effect of alignment is that it attracts people, not just resources. Opportunities rarely come alone. They come through relationships, conversations, and trust. Desperation repels people because it feels heavy and transactional. Alignment attracts people because it feels grounded and purposeful. People trust those who are not trying to extract from them, but are focused on contribution. And where trust exists, access follows. Alignment does not mean perfection. It does not mean you never struggle or doubt. It means that even in struggle, your direction is clear. Even in lack, your values remain intact. Even in waiting, you are working on what you can control. Heaven watches direction more than emotion. It watches consistency more than intensity. The painful truth is that many people use prayer to avoid alignment. They pray so they don't have to change habits. They pray so they don't have to learn new skills. They pray so they don't have to confront fear, discipline their time, or take responsibility for their growth. But prayer was never meant to be an escape from alignment. It was meant to guide you into it. When alignment is established, provision stops feeling forced. It becomes natural, ideas make sense, steps feel clearer, doors open without manipulation. Money arrives through channels you didn't beg for because you became someone who could be trusted with it. Heaven doesn't need to be pressured when alignment is present. It releases what is needed at the right time because the foundation is ready. In conclusion, stop approaching heaven from desperation and start approaching it from alignment. Desperation asks for relief. Alignment prepares for responsibility. Desperation focuses on lack. Alignment focuses on purpose. Desperation wants money now. Alignment builds the capacity to sustain it later. When your life is aligned with value, discipline, service, and growth, money stops being something you chase or pray for endlessly. It becomes something that follows you as a consequence of who you have become. Heaven does not fund fear. Heaven funds alignment. Asking for capacity before cash is one of the most misunderstood principles of provision. Yet it is the reason some people rise steadily while others remain stuck praying for breakthroughs that never last. Capacity is the ability to receive, manage, multiply, and sustain what comes into your life. Money without capacity is not a blessing, it is a burden. That is why heaven is far more interested in who you are becoming than in what you are requesting. When you pray only for money, you are asking for a result without preparing for the responsibility that comes with it. Most people underestimate how much inner strength, discipline, and wisdom money demands. Money amplifies whatever already exists within you. If your thinking is disorganized, money magnifies chaos. If your emotions are unstable, money magnifies impulsive decisions. If your character is weak, money magnifies temptation. Heaven knows this. That is why it often withholds money, not as punishment, but as protection. What feels like delay is often mercy. Capacity begins in the mind. If your mindset is small, fearful, or reactive, you cannot handle expansion. A limited mindset looks for quick wins instead of long-term systems. It seeks comfort instead of growth. It avoids responsibility and expects miracles to replace maturity. When you pray for capacity, you are asking heaven to stretch your thinking, to teach you patience, strategy, and long-term vision. This kind of prayer invites pressure, not comfort, because growth always requires stretching. Many people say they want capacity, but they resist the very processes that build it. Discipline is another core part of capacity. Money flows toward structure. If you cannot manage your time, your energy, or your commitments, you will not manage money well either. Heaven observes patterns, not promises. If you are inconsistent with small responsibilities, there is no reason for larger ones to be entrusted to you. Discipline is not punishment, it is preparation. When you ask for capacity, you are asking to become consistent, reliable, and focused, even when motivation fades. Wisdom is also essential. Wisdom is knowing what to do, when to do it, and when not to do it. Many people pray for money, but they do not pray for wisdom, and that is dangerous. Wisdom protects wealth. Wisdom teaches restraint, timing, and discernment. It helps you recognize opportunities and avoid traps. Without wisdom, money becomes a test you are not equipped to pass. That is why some people experience sudden increase followed by sudden collapse. The increase was real, but the wisdom to sustain it was missing. Capacity is built through responsibility, not comfort. Heaven increases those who prove faithful with what they already have. If you misuse small resources, you signal unreadiness for larger ones. This applies not only to money, but to influence, relationships, and opportunities. When you ask for capacity, you are asking to be trained through everyday life. You are asking to grow through repetition, patience, and humility. These are not glamorous processes, but they are powerful. Another overlooked aspect of capacity is emotional maturity. Money introduces pressure, expectations, and scrutiny. If your emotions control you, money will expose that weakness. Emotional maturity allows you to make decisions without panic, pride, or insecurity. It allows you to delay gratification and remain steady during highs and lows. When you pray for capacity, you are asking to become emotionally grounded, not easily shaken by circumstances. This stability is something heaven values deeply. Capacity also includes the ability to give. If you cannot release, you cannot receive sustainably. Hoarding is a sign of fear, not readiness. Heaven looks for people who understand flow. Giving proves trust, abundance thinking, and freedom from control. It shows that money does not own you. When you ask for capacity, you are asking to hold resources with open hands, not clenched fists. This posture invites continual flow rather than stagnation. Many people want the outcome of wealth without the identity required to carry it. Capacity is about identity. It is about becoming the kind of person who can steward increase without losing themselves. Heaven is more concerned with who you are becoming than with how much you have. That is why true provision often arrives slowly and steadily, allowing your capacity to grow alongside it. Sudden increase without growth usually leads to loss, regret, or destruction. When you shift your prayers from "give me money" to "make me ready," something changes internally. You stop seeing obstacles as enemies and start seeing them as training. You stop resenting delay and start using it wisely. You stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on your own development. This internal shift is powerful because it moves you from entitlement to stewardship. Capacity also attracts opportunities naturally. People trust those who demonstrate wisdom, consistency, and maturity. Opportunities are not always financial at first. They often come as responsibility, learning, or access, but these are seeds. When handled well, they lead to increase. When mishandled, they disappear. Capacity determines whether an opportunity becomes a breakthrough or a missed chance. In conclusion, asking for capacity before cash is not a denial of provision. It is the foundation of sustainable abundance. Money is not withheld because heaven is distant or unkind, but because it is intentional and wise. Capacity protects you from destruction, prepares you for stewardship, and positions you for lasting increase. When you pray for wisdom, discipline, emotional maturity, and character, you are aligning yourself with the kind of growth heaven can safely support. Money that comes after capacity is not stressful, it is stable. It does not control you, it serves your purpose. Heaven does not rush to give money to those who are not ready to carry it. But when capacity is built, provision follows naturally, steadily, and without struggle. Becoming valuable instead of merely spiritual is a truth that challenges many deeply held assumptions. Spiritual language, prayers, and beliefs are powerful, but they do not replace usefulness. Heaven does not fund intentions or emotions, it funds impact. Value is the practical expression of purpose. It is what turns belief into benefit for others. When a person focuses only on spirituality without developing value, they may feel righteous, but they remain ineffective. And ineffectiveness is never rewarded with provision. Value begins with solving real problems. Money moves toward solutions because solutions relieve pressure, save time, create progress, or reduce pain. If your life does not currently reduce anyone's burden, money has no reason to flow through you. This is not harsh, it is logical. Heaven is orderly. It releases resources where they will produce results. A person who develops skills, insight, or services that genuinely help others automatically becomes a channel for provision. Spirituality without service becomes self-centered, even if it sounds holy. Many people confuse devotion with contribution. They believe that because they pray, fast, or speak about faith, provision should follow automatically. But faith was never meant to be displayed only in private rituals. It was meant to be demonstrated through action. True spirituality expresses itself through responsibility, excellence, and care for others. When spirituality becomes detached from value creation, it turns into escape rather than empowerment. Becoming valuable requires humility. You must admit what you do not know and be willing to learn. It requires effort, patience, and discipline. These qualities are not glamorous, but they are essential. Developing value often means starting small, being unseen, and improving quietly over time. Many abandon this process because it does not feel spiritual enough. But heaven is deeply invested in process because process shapes character. Value is not about chasing trends or copying others. It is about discovering where your abilities meet real needs. Everyone has something they can develop into value, but it must be refined. Raw talent is rarely enough. It must be trained, tested, and matured. This refinement process can feel uncomfortable because it exposes weaknesses. But exposure is necessary for growth. Heaven does not avoid your weaknesses, it works through them to produce strength. Another important aspect of value is reliability. Being valuable means people can count on you. It means you show up consistently, deliver what you promise, and maintain standards even when no one is watching. Reliability builds trust, and trust attracts opportunity. Many people pray for favor, but favor flows toward those who have proven dependable. Heaven does not bypass this principle. Spirituality that lacks reliability remains theoretical. Value also multiplies when you focus on excellence. Excellence is not perfection, it is care. It is doing the best you can with what you have. When you pursue excellence, you respect your assignment and the people you serve. This mindset transforms ordinary work into meaningful contribution. Heaven honors excellence because it reflects stewardship. Sloppiness repels provision because it signals indifference. Serving value also shifts your focus outward. Instead of asking, "What can I get?" you begin asking, "How can I help?" This shift changes everything. When your life becomes oriented around contribution, money stops being the goal and becomes the result. Provision flows naturally to those who are focused on impact rather than extraction. Desperation fades when purpose takes its place. It is important to understand that being valuable does not mean being busy. Busyness without impact is still unproductive. Value is measured by results, not activity. Heaven is not impressed by exhaustion. It is impressed by effectiveness. When you focus on creating meaningful outcomes, your efforts become targeted and intentional. This clarity reduces frustration and increases momentum. Becoming valuable also protects you from entitlement. Entitlement expects reward without responsibility. Value-based thinking understands that provision is earned through contribution. This mindset creates confidence that is grounded, not arrogant. You know what you bring to the table, and you are continually improving it. Heaven supports this attitude because it aligns with growth and stewardship. As you grow in value, you will notice that opportunities begin to find you. People recommend you, doors open, conversations lead to new paths. This is not magic, it is alignment. Value creates demand, and where there is demand, provision follows. You no longer need to convince or chase. Your work speaks for you. In conclusion, becoming valuable instead of merely spiritual is about integrating faith with function. Spirituality provides direction, values, and motivation, but value provides impact. Heaven funds impact because impact changes lives. When you commit to solving problems, developing skills, serving with excellence, and remaining reliable, you position yourself as a trusted channel for provision. Money is not attracted to religious language or emotional prayers. It is attracted to usefulness and results. When spirituality fuels value, provision becomes sustainable, meaningful, and aligned with purpose. Heaven does not fund words alone. It funds lives that make a difference. Movement activates provision in ways that waiting never can. As long as a person remains still, hoping that something external will change, nothing has a reason to respond. Stillness rooted in fear looks like patience, but it is actually avoidance. Heaven responds to motion because motion signals belief, responsibility, and readiness. When you move, you demonstrate that you trust direction more than comfort. You show that you are willing to participate in the answer instead of demanding it arrive fully formed. Many people misunderstand faith as passive waiting. They believe that if something is meant for them, it will arrive without effort. But faith was never meant to cancel action. It was meant to fuel it. Movement is faith made visible. It is the evidence that you believe something can grow, even if it is small, imperfect, or uncertain. Heaven does not fund intentions sitting in your mind. It funds momentum expressed through action. Movement breaks the illusion of perfection. People often delay starting because they want clarity, certainty, or confidence first. But clarity follows movement, not the other way around. Confidence is built through repetition, not contemplation. When you move, you gather information, you learn what works and what doesn't, you refine direction. This process cannot happen while standing still. Heaven supports learning in motion because growth requires feedback, and feedback only comes through action. Provision follows motion because motion creates pathways. When you take steps, you encounter people, ideas, and opportunities that you would never meet while waiting. A closed door is still information. A failed attempt still teaches. Even setbacks are productive when you are moving because they sharpen discernment. Heaven values this kind of progress because it develops maturity. A person who moves learns how to adjust, adapt, and persist. These qualities are essential for sustaining provision. Stillness often feels safe because it protects you from failure, judgment, and disappointment. But safety is not the same as growth. Heaven does not fund comfort zones because nothing multiplies there. Growth requires exposure. It requires risk. When you move, you expose yourself to outcomes beyond your control, and that vulnerability is powerful. It signals trust. It says, I am willing to try even without guarantees. Heaven responds to that posture. Movement also activates responsibility. When you take action, you become accountable to results. Accountability sharpens focus. It forces you to manage time, energy, and priorities. Many people ask for provision while avoiding responsibility. They want the reward without the weight, but provision always comes with responsibility. Movement proves you are willing to carry it. Even small movement matters. You do not need massive action to activate provision. You need consistent action. Sending the message, starting the project, learning the skill, showing up daily. These small steps compound. Heaven honors consistency because it reveals discipline. Sporadic bursts of effort, driven by emotion, do not create momentum. Steady movement driven by commitment does. Movement shifts your identity. When you act, you stop seeing yourself as someone waiting to be chosen and start seeing yourself as someone building. This identity shift is critical. Builders attract resources. Builders attract collaborators. Builders attract trust. Heaven invests in builders because they create structure for increase. Waiting creates dependency, movement creates stewardship. Another powerful effect of movement is that it silences fear. Fear thrives in imagination. When you stay still, your mind creates worst-case scenarios that feel real. Movement brings fear into reality where it loses power. You realize that failure is survivable, rejection is not fatal, and progress is possible. This emotional resilience is part of what heaven looks for before releasing greater provision. Movement also reveals alignment. When you take steps, you quickly discover whether something fits your purpose or not. Waiting keeps everything theoretical. Action brings truth. Heaven uses movement to guide you. Doors open and close not to confuse you, but to redirect you. Without movement, guidance has nothing to work with. Provision often comes after commitment, not before it. Many people say they will move once resources appear. Heaven often says resources will appear once you move. This is not cruelty, it is wisdom. Movement proves sincerity. It shows that you are not dependent on perfect conditions to act. Those who move despite uncertainty develop strength, creativity, and endurance, qualities required for sustainable provision. Movement also keeps you humble. Action exposes limitations and keeps you learning. Waiting can inflate ego because you imagine what you might do someday. Movement grounds you in reality and progress. Heaven values humility because it keeps growth healthy. A humble mover is teachable. A stagnant dreamer is often defensive. In the process of movement, provision may not look like money at first. It may look like knowledge, connections, access, or experience. These are forms of provision. When handled well, they lead to financial increase later. Many people overlook these early forms because they are focused only on cash. But heaven builds foundations before releasing finances. Movement allows those foundations to form. In conclusion, movement activates provision because it turns faith into participation. Heaven responds to action, not avoidance, to momentum, not hesitation. When you move, you prove readiness, responsibility, and trust. You create pathways for guidance, learning, and opportunity. Waiting may feel spiritual, but movement is transformational. Provision is rarely delivered to those who stand still asking for signs. It flows to those who take steps, learn in motion, and persist despite uncertainty. Heaven does not fund intentions alone. It funds lives that are moving forward. Giving before receiving is one of the most uncomfortable principles for the human mind because it contradicts fear-based logic. Fear says, hold on tightly because you might not get more. Heaven says, release because flow only exists where there is movement. Giving is not about the amount, it is about the posture of the heart and the state of the mind. When a person gives, they are not losing something. They are demonstrating trust in abundance rather than scarcity. Heaven responds to trust because trust aligns with how provision is designed to move. Many people delay giving because they believe they must first feel secure. But security is not created by accumulation. It is created by confidence in flow. Those who wait to give until they feel safe often never feel safe enough. Fear always finds a reason to delay generosity. Heaven does not respond to fear, no matter how logical it sounds. It responds to obedience and trust. Giving is evidence that you believe provision is renewable, not finite. Giving also reveals who controls your life. If money controls you, releasing it feels painful. If you control money, releasing it feels purposeful. Heaven looks for people who are not owned by what they possess. Wealth in the hands of someone controlled by fear becomes destructive. That is why giving is a qualification before increase. It proves you can handle resources without being enslaved by them. Another powerful dimension of giving is that it breaks entitlement. Entitlement expects rewards without responsibility. Giving shifts your focus from what you deserve to what you can contribute. This mindset is essential for growth. Heaven does not fund entitlement because it creates arrogance and waste. Giving cultivates humility, gratitude, and awareness of others. These qualities protect you when provision increases. Giving also trains you to think beyond yourself. Provision is never meant to terminate on one person. It is meant to flow through them to others. When you give, you align with that design. You become a channel rather than a container. Containers eventually stagnate. Channels stay fresh. Heaven invests in channels because they multiply impact. Fear-based minds ask, what if I give and nothing comes back? But faith-based minds ask, what if holding back is what blocks the flow? Giving is not a transaction, it is alignment. It positions you in a state where provision can circulate. Heaven is not manipulated by giving, but it responds to the posture giving represents: openness, trust, and alignment with flow. Giving also sharpens discernment. When you give intentionally, you become more aware of where resources go and why. You start thinking about impact rather than impulse. This awareness builds stewardship. Heaven looks for stewards, not spenders. Giving trains you to release with wisdom, not recklessness. Another overlooked aspect of giving is that it shifts your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone in need and start seeing yourself as someone who has something to offer. This identity shift is powerful. Need-based identity repels provision because it reinforces lack. Contributor identity attracts provision because it reflects abundance thinking. Heaven responds to how you see yourself. Giving also creates internal freedom. Holding tightly creates anxiety. Releasing creates peace. When you give, you loosen fear's grip on your mind. You prove to yourself that your well-being is not dependent on hoarding. This emotional freedom prepares you for greater responsibility. Money given in fear creates stress. Money given in trust creates clarity. It is important to understand that giving is not limited to money. Time, energy, knowledge, and kindness are also forms of giving. But financial giving is unique because money touches survival fears. That is why it is such a powerful test. When you can give financially with peace, you demonstrate a level of trust that heaven honors. Giving does not mean irresponsibility. It does not mean neglecting obligations or acting recklessly. True giving is intentional, disciplined, and aligned with wisdom. Heaven values balanced generosity. Giving without wisdom creates chaos. Wisdom without giving creates stagnation. The two must work together. When giving becomes a lifestyle rather than an event, provision becomes steady rather than sporadic. Sporadic giving driven by emotion produces inconsistent results. Consistent giving driven by principle builds flow. Heaven responds to consistency because it reflects maturity. In conclusion, giving before receiving is not about forcing heaven. It is about aligning with how provision is designed to work. Giving breaks fear, exposes control, builds stewardship, and positions you as a channel rather than a container. It shifts your identity from needy to contributor and trains you for sustainable increase. Heaven does not respond to hoarding, fear, or entitlement. It responds to trust, flow, and obedience. When you give with wisdom and consistency, you are not losing, you are aligning. And alignment always precedes provision. Understanding that work is not the opposite of faith is one of the most liberating realizations a person can have. Many people unconsciously treat work and faith as competing forces, as if trusting heaven means doing less, waiting more, and avoiding effort. This misunderstanding creates frustration because life does not respond to passivity. Faith was never designed to replace action. It was designed to give action direction, meaning, and endurance. When faith is separated from work, it becomes abstract. When work is separated from faith, it becomes exhausting. The two were always meant to function together. Faith without work often disguises fear. It sounds spiritual, but underneath it is hesitation, doubt, or avoidance of responsibility. Waiting feels safer than trying. Praying feels safer than risking failure, but heaven does not reward safety rooted in fear. Faith is not proven by how much you say you trust. It is proven by how you move while trusting. Work is the visible evidence of belief. If you truly believe that something is possible, you act in alignment with that belief. Work gives faith structure. Without structure, faith becomes emotional rather than practical. You may feel inspired one day and discouraged the next. Work anchors faith in routine, discipline, and consistency. It translates belief into habits. Heaven honors this because consistency reflects maturity. Sudden bursts of spiritual intensity without steady effort rarely produce lasting results. Many people pray for open doors while refusing to prepare. They ask for opportunities but neglect skill. They ask for increase but avoid responsibility. This creates a contradiction. Heaven does not open doors you are not prepared to walk through. Preparation is not a lack of faith. It is an expression of it. When you prepare, you are saying, I believe this is possible, so I am getting ready. Work also refines intention. When you begin working towards something, your motives are tested. You discover whether you truly want growth or just recognition, whether you want purpose or just comfort. This refinement is necessary. Heaven values pure intention because impure intention leads to misuse of provision. Work exposes and corrects intention in ways prayer alone cannot. Faith gives work resilience. Without faith, work becomes heavy. You measure progress only by immediate results. You quit when things are slow. Faith allows you to work even when outcomes are delayed. It gives you patience and perspective. You understand that effort is not wasted simply because results are not immediate. Heaven often uses delay to strengthen endurance. Work also protects you from entitlement. Entitlement expects reward without effort. Faith-based work understands that provision is partnered with responsibility. When you work with faith, you do not feel owed, you feel entrusted. This mindset creates gratitude instead of resentment. Heaven responds to gratitude because it keeps growth healthy. Another powerful aspect of work is that it builds capacity. You cannot grow capacity by waiting. Capacity is developed through repetition, problem solving, and learning from mistakes. Work creates friction, and friction creates strength. Heaven does not release large provision into small capacity. Work expands capacity so provision can flow safely. Work also sharpens discernment. When you are active, you gain clarity about what works and what doesn't. You learn where your strengths lie and where adjustment is needed. Waiting keeps everything theoretical. Action brings truth. Heaven guides through movement, not stagnation. Direction becomes clearer as you work. Faith-driven work removes pressure from outcomes. When you believe heaven is your source, you work diligently without panic. You do your part and trust the timing. This balance creates peace. You are not lazy and you are not anxious. You are engaged but not desperate. This state of mind is powerful and attractive to opportunity. Work also honors the gift of ability. Skills, talents, and intelligence are not accidents. They are tools. Ignoring them while claiming faith is dishonoring the very resources you've been given. Heaven expects stewardship. When you work, you are stewarding what you already have. Faith does not mean waiting for more before using what is present. Many people think miracles eliminate effort. In reality, miracles often meet effort halfway. Even in moments of divine intervention, there is usually a step required. Faith responds, then moves. Work is the response. Heaven moves where cooperation exists. When work and faith are aligned, burnout decreases. Burnout comes from striving without meaning or believing without acting. Faith gives work meaning, and work gives faith expression. Together, they create sustainable momentum. You are not driven by fear or ego, but by purpose. In conclusion, work is not the opposite of faith. It is the evidence of it. Faith without work remains invisible, and work without faith becomes exhausting. Heaven honors those who pray with sincerity and act with discipline. When you work in alignment with faith, you become a partner rather than a spectator. Provision flows not because you forced it, but because you positioned yourself responsibly. Heaven does not reward passivity disguised as belief. It supports effort guided by trust. Faith moves mountains, but work is how you climb them. Praying for positioning rather than outcomes is a shift that transforms how provision enters your life. Most people focus their prayers on results: money, success, relief, or recognition. These are outcomes, but outcomes are temporary and often misleading. Positioning, on the other hand, is foundational. When you are positioned correctly, outcomes take care of themselves. Heaven is far more concerned with where you are placed than with what you are demanding, because placement determines flow. Positioning is about alignment with need. When you are where you are needed, provision becomes natural. Resources move toward purpose, but when you are positioned incorrectly, chasing status, comfort, or comparison, provision becomes strained. You can pray harder, but misalignment blocks flow. Heaven does not force outcomes into the wrong environment. It redirects people until they are placed correctly. Praying for outcomes often bypasses growth. You want the reward without the refinement. Positioning requires patience because it involves preparation, redirection, and sometimes removal. Heaven may move you away from familiar places, people, or plans. This can feel like loss, but it is often correction. Right placement sometimes looks like setback before it looks like progress. Positioning also protects you. Outcomes without proper positioning can damage you. Success in the wrong environment creates pressure, insecurity, and compromise. Heaven cares about your sustainability, not just your visibility. That is why it often withholds outcomes until positioning is right. Protection is built into placement. When you are positioned correctly, you do not have to force doors. Access becomes easier, relationships align, opportunities make sense. You are not striving to belong, you are contributing naturally. This is one of the clearest signs of right positioning. Effort still exists, but strain decreases. You work, but you are not fighting the environment. Positioning develops through obedience, not control. Many people resist being positioned because they want to decide the outcome themselves. They want assurance before obedience, but positioning often requires movement without full clarity. Heaven reveals placement step by step. Trust grows through obedience, not explanation. Positioning also exposes identity. Where you are placed reveals who you are becoming. In the wrong place, you perform. In the right place, you function. Performance is exhausting, function is fulfilling. Heaven positions people where their authentic strengths are needed, not where they can pretend. Another critical aspect of positioning is timing. Being in the right place at the wrong time is still misalignment. Heaven controls timing because timing protects growth. Many people pray to be elevated quickly, not realizing that early exposure can destroy confidence or character. Heaven delays outcomes until timing matches maturity. Positioning shifts your prayer language. Instead of saying, "Give me this," you start saying, "Place me where I can serve best." This prayer removes entitlement and invites stewardship. You are no longer negotiating outcomes. You are submitting to purpose. Heaven responds to this posture because it reflects trust. When positioned well, money stops being the focus. It becomes a resource that supports your function. You are not distracted by comparison or competition. You are engaged in contribution. Provision flows because your work matters in that environment. Demand exists because need exists. Misalignment often shows up as constant frustration. You are working hard but feeling drained. You are achieving but feeling empty. These are signals, not failures. Heaven uses discomfort to redirect positioning. Comfort in the wrong place is more dangerous than discomfort in transition. Positioning also affects relationships. In the right place, collaboration replaces competition. You are surrounded by people who sharpen you, not drain you. Heaven uses community to confirm placement. Isolation often signals misalignment. When you pray for positioning, you give heaven permission to rearrange. This can be uncomfortable because it challenges ego and attachment, but rearrangement is often necessary for expansion. You cannot grow in spaces that no longer fit you. In conclusion, praying for positioning instead of outcomes is a prayer of maturity and trust. Outcomes are temporary. Positioning is transformative. When you are placed where you are needed, provision becomes automatic and sustainable. Heaven is not withholding blessings. It is aligning you for longevity, protection, and impact. When positioning is right, you do not have to chase outcomes. They arrive as a consequence of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right work.